so. And just to bring this a little bit to make it more personal for you, I have had the honor these past few months to be there in the hospitals and in the evacuation hotels and in the headquarters of the hostages, and to be there to represent not just the Jewish Agency, but to represent, in fact, all of us, to represent the global Jewish people that is reaching out at this time of need to give some degree of comfort and some degree of promise that even if very sadly I'm saying this, the state of Israel failed its citizens on October 7th, the Jewish people is there to be committed to everyone that is hurting now and for years to come. So this young man that I met by his hospital bed in late October, it's a complete story of miracle, how Oshri even is alive, how he survived. He went out fishing at the Zikim beach on the morning of October 7th. It was the first time in his life that he went out fishing without his father, who chose to remain in his warm bed on that morning. Oshri barely arrived at the beach, barely even got a chance to unpack his fishing gear when he saw a sight that he just could not believe and could not understand. Mm-hmm. On the one hand, the sky became red and full of light because of the blazing rockets flying overhead. And on the other hand, he started seeing terrorists emerging from the water, coming out as scuba divers from the water onto the Zikim beach. Oshri did not serve in the IDF. He has a chronic disease. He completely was defenseless. And the only thing he could think of was somehow run to the nearest bomb shelter and hide. What he did not realize is that more and more terrorists were coming, and they came to that mobile shelter. And at this point, we all know what happened in those mobile shelters and how grenades were thrown in, and later how armed with machine guns terrorists came in. Oshri saw those people around him by his side killed on the spot, and he suffered a direct hit of a bullet that went into his eye socket, down his esophagus, and into his intestine. And somehow, despite these critical wounds, he somehow made a decision that he is not dying today. He managed to get himself out of that shelter and into his car, start the car and drive for a few hundred meters until he was stopped by two policemen. The policemen that saw that he was completely not capable of driving, they put him in their car and they drove like bats out of hell, coming into the Barzilai hospital, where they left him as an anonymous patient. By this point, he was completely unconscious. He was hospitalized as an anonymous patient, and they themselves drove back into the gunfire and into the rocket fire to try and save civilians that day. Oshri was hospitalized as anonymous for nearly 3 days. His family, that was beyond driven crazy by concern, were finally able to identify him. He was unconscious and sedated for over a week. He underwent some 9 operations, received 7 blood transfusions. Truly, it's a miracle that he's alive. And when I came to visit him the first time, he didn't even want me to take his picture. He hardly was able to speak. The second time that I came to visit him, he told me that he has one request. And what was his request? He said, "Those police officers saved me. And I am so afraid that maybe they are no more, that maybe they died, because they dropped me at the hotel and then at the hospital, and then they drove back into the fire, into the fighting. And I want to be able to try and find them." And he only knew where they met him, and he was only able to say that one of them was of the Ethiopian community. And I assured him that our command center will do everything it can to contact the police and to find those policemen. And Mark, I want to tell you that it took us a few days, but we found those policemen. And I called them on the phone. And I first called Avraham, and I told him, "Hi, my name is Danielle. I'm from the Jewish Agency. And do you recall that a few weeks ago, you rescued a young man from the Zikim beach area?" And he immediately said to me, "Is he alive?" And I said, yes, he's alive. And there was silence on the line. And I said, are you there, Avraham? And he said, and he started crying. He started crying and he said, I have seen that young man in my dreams every night since that day. And I was sure that he must be dead. And I couldn't even bring myself to try and locate him because I was sure that I would find out that he's dead. And I told him, Avraham, he's alive. Not only is he alive, he was worried about you and he wants to meet you. And then the next phone call was to Danielle, and Danielle was the second policeman that saved him. And with Danielle, it was the same thing, Mark. He also told me that he's been seeing this young man in his dreams and is sure that he is dead. And here you can see the time that we were able to bring them together. Avraham and Danielle, the two police officers that saved Oshri that day, that saved many other lives that day, and that, thank God, are here alive to tell the story. And when you look at this picture, you see a tapestry of Israeli society. You see an Ole from Ethiopia. You see a young man from the city of Sderot who belongs to the founding generational families that founded Sderot. You see Danielle, the officer that made Aliyah from Ukraine and was educated in the Jewish agency Aliyah village of Hadassah Neurim. And you see myself representing in some way the global Jewish people. Danielle, Avraham, and Oshri are now, of course, in touch. The families feel that this is a bond that will go with them forever. And us being able to be there for Oshri, to support their family in the time of need, and to create this reunion is such an important step in them having faith that they can somehow emerge and continue to live from this tragedy.